Okay, we're moving on with Second Kings, and like we've already said, these books really, if you look at the way they are, First Kings runs, 22 chapters. So, and you'll see that's about a cutoff point for these. We'll get into the story of Second Kings. It's a continuation of First Kings, obviously. We're left off with the kings Ahaziah and Jehoshaphat in their respective thrones in Judah and Israel. 721 BC is going to mark the end of the northern kingdom, the fall to Samaria. That's an important date for Bible history. This is described in 2 Kings chapters 1 through 17. Chapters 18 through 25 describe the capture and destruction of Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BC. So it's quite a space of time there. We're covering, we're going from the 8th century BC to the 6th century BC. It's a long time. 586 BC is a date everybody should kind of have in mind. This is really it's the end of Jewish self-rule, essentially until modern times. They'll really be a vassal state. You could beg the question or ask the question, did they ever really rule themselves? Well, probably briefly, but not much. In all, the Book of Kings covers a period from around the 900s to the 500s BC. So it's quite a space of centuries there. The whole point to be demonstrated in this work is that not keeping the covenant of the Lord results in bad things. You have to keep the Mosaic covenant, or you're not the people of God and God is not with you. As we've said before, the 10 commandments were not the 10 suggestions. We're not the 10 kind of ideas. So anyone who's had Dr. Crenshaw, you've probably read that book. It says the 10 commandments. These are not suggestions, something like that. It's a good book. I enjoyed reading it. Let's go back for a moment to our original Edenic theology of Eden. We have the people of God ever gone in and taken the promised land of Abraham, or was promised to Abraham? Have they ever done that? Not really. They only do it in fits and spurts, never completely. Has the people of God ever kept the covenant with God? Not really. Not very well. Not for any length of time. Much of what we've covered so far is the people's persistent need to fail keeping the covenant of God. They have this constant urge to dabble in other religions and not follow directions. This is much of what all these Old Testament books are about. Does this sound like people we know? Sounds like the Christian church in many ways. We always got to have a better idea about something, always going to try something new, something novel, something clever. Oh, maybe we're going to entertain for a while. Okay. You can see. At the end of the time, there will be those who say to God, "Thy will be done." And there will be those to whom God says, "Thy will be done." That's from C.S. Lewis. So, if you get that, there are those people that will look at God, look at the scriptures, look at the church tradition, look at their teachings that they've been given, and try to conform themselves to it. And there are those people that God will look at, and he'll see what they're doing, and he'll say, apparently your will is going to be done. You've got free will. That's the paramount thing. So theodicy, that's the study of why do bad things happen to good people. Well, one of the key components to that is people have free will. God never violates human free will. That's all. Stick with orthodoxy. It's safe ground. Right off the bat in chapter 1 of 2 Kings, Ahaziah would like to consult Baal-zebub. Beelzebub, right? They want to consult, they want diviners. These are popular amongst people. Think of the Oracle of Delphi. Everybody wants to go and, get the future told. That's not what God doesn't want you doing divination. He doesn't say it doesn't work. No one says that maybe this is true, but you're not to do it. So I don't even read horoscopes or that kind of thing. I think it's a bad way to go. Don't play with that little ball, that Magic 8 ball or that stuff. And don't let your kids play with that. The tarot cards are a terrible idea. Don't even have that in your house. None of that stuff. That's divination. So why do we have prophets? Prophets have to come when we're not doing what we're supposed to do. They call us out. In 1:8 of 2 Kings, Elijah looks a lot like John the Baptist. Elijah and the Lord consume 100 men, and captains of the king are to go another 50. And he prophesies the death of the king. 1:18 is the stock line of this book in 2 Kings. So let's take a look at that, 1:18. Now the rest of the acts of Hosea that he did, are they not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel? That's a curious phrase. It's in this book a lot. When there are other books we don't have. The annals of the kings of Israel, it doesn't exist as far as we know. I mean, it did at one time, but that's a very stock line in there. So the Bible makes reference to sacred texts that have been lost. That's just good to know. Why are they lost? Well, who knows? Maybe we'll find them someday. Sometimes we do find these things. In chapter 2, Elijah demonstrates the real presence of the Lord and crosses the Jordan River on dry ground. This is always a sign that God's around when people cross on dry ground, ever since crossing the Red Sea. It's a catchphrase in scriptures. Only the Lord can do this. No one else does this. Elijah is swept up to heaven in a fiery chariot. So he's gone. When do we see him again? Right, the Transfiguration. So we see Moses and Elijah, the law and the prophets, with Christ. We'll see him again. And that's kind of a sign too that, how do we exist after we die? Well, I don't know, but you do somehow, because here at the Transfiguration, you can, these people are present. So they're somewhere. But his student takes over. Elisha takes over with the same spirit of the Lord. And there's a funny little story in the second. Let's read this. This is about mocking of bald men. I know some of these are funny. So it's 2:25. He went up from there to Bethel, and while he was going up on his way, some small boys came out of the city and jeered at him, saying, "Go away, bald head, go away, bald head." When he turned around and he saw them, he cursed them in the name of the Lord. Then 2 she-bears came out of the woods and mauled 42 of the boys. From there he went on to Mount Carmel, then returned to Samaria. That's a funny little story. I mean, it's in the text. So there you go. It's one of the funnier little pieces of sacred scripture that Elisha curses these boys in the name of the Lord. We don't really think of a man of God doing that, but he does, and they're mauled by bear. So there you go. So be careful. 42 boys got mauled for calling hay baldy. Chapter 3 begins with more sinful kings and Baals. Edom, Israel, and Judah are briefly united against the Moabites. But really, when you see their actions in the text, they're pretty much idolaters. They're pretty much pagans at this point. They know who the Lord is, but there's all kinds of other gods. So this is called henotheism, for the technical name for it. That you may have a god, but it's once amongst many gods. That they're not to the point, they really are not thinking as monotheists. They're just not. We've seen the king of Moab engaging in human sacrifice of his son. So I mentioned that earlier. People really did that. Elisha is the prophet at hand. And he deals kindly with the Shunammite woman, and hospitality is repaid with a son. And he works a miracle of plentiful olive oil. The Spirit of God is with Elisha after Elijah has departed. And we get a clear allusion here, chapter 4:43, it's an allusion to the feeding of the 5,000. Here it's only 100 people, but it looks a lot like Christ feeding the 5,000. Chapter 5, there's a subtlety there, but the point is that the prophet in Israel, Elisha, and the people of God should not take offerings or things from pagans as gifts. So they all get leprosy. So that's as unclean of a thing as you can get. Chapter 6 demonstrates how the Lord is now with Elisha. And it speaks of these spiritual truths. I'm not a really big supernatural kind of guy, but I think sometimes we don't see the full reality of God's presence. I'm pretty sure we don't. We may just see an occasional glimpse of it. But in 628, when people are getting down to cannibalism, this is a low point. People don't eat other people. So, but this is in the story. Elisha prophesies about the coming of food. So they're so impoverished and so with nothing. They're eating human flesh. So, chapter 8, Elijah travels to Damascus. 8:12, the desolation of the people of Israel is foretold. Some would say this was written after the fact. It might have been. And then a lot of times that's how we write our histories, You write it as a narrative, somewhat like in the first person as you're there, but it maybe has long since happened. Not unusual. And we see even here in chapters 8, 19, the foreshadowing of Christ and kind of this importance ever since David, and every time after David, being attached to the house of David will be a big deal. And that's why the New Testament authors and people, to get Christ attached to the house of David, the root of Jesse. This is a big deal. The whole point of the succession of kings is automatically summed up when they are listed. And what they get to the end of the story about this king, and they did evil in the sight of the Lord. Well, that guy's no good. That's a bad one. Once that statement is made, nothing else good is going to happen with or about this person. 9:22, 2 Kings. How can there be peace as long as all the witchcraft and idolatry of your mother Jezebel is around? Okay, you don't want to be referred to as a Jezebel ever, because then you're a witch. 9:32 and following tell the terrible end Elijah prophesied about her, and it comes to pass. She's eaten by dogs. So you can see, now what would be worse than eaten by dogs? I don't know, eaten by pigs. That's probably the only dirtier thing I can think of. It was eaten by pigs, eaten by dogs. The Lord gets fairly upset about the killing of the righteous. The people that follow his, and who are the righteous? Those who follow the Mosaic covenant as well as they can and stay true to their relationship with God and to his moral code. Chapter 10 is really gruesome. Jehu has quite a zeal for killing. And the point here is, if you disrespect Elijah or Elisha and worship false gods, things are not going to go well for you. You're going to get it. And again we see in 10:38, out comes a golden calf. Whenever you see a golden calf in the Old Testament, the people of God have gotten astray. They just, here they go again. Not even that creative. Just drag out the same old idols. But we have some royal intrigue of who's going to rule. From time to time, Israel gets their act together and does away with idols, but it never lasts for very long. So by this point in history, the Temple of Solomon is in bad shape. It's run down, probably not being kept up at all. All the sacred objects, or many, have been carted off, captured, sold. Israel is down to 50 horsemen and a few chariots. This is a piddling army. Elisha dies in 1320, and he's just gone. 1414, the temple's pillaged by Israel against Judah. I think Jerusalem is in Judah, Israel's to the north. So the people of God are warring with each other. They're self-destructing. They're just, everybody's out of line. And they're not written in the book of the annals of the kings of Israel and Judah. It appears about 25 times, that thing. Whatever they did is written in the book of the annals of the kings of Judah or Israel. It'd be nice to have these books and see what happened. But so this is a thing too. This is kind of a truism, is so that the Bible instructs us. It's supposed to encourage us and instruct us. But what does this kind of thing here tell us with the Christian church? When the church is divided, it doesn't do well. What do we say when we say the creed? I believe in one holy, Catholic, and apostolic church. I don't see one holy, Catholic, and apostolic church. I don't see one church. I often don't see a holy church. And then sometimes I question the Catholicity of many things. But so we say that one holy and Catholic. Well, what happened? I mean, you know, after 1,000 years, we broke it up east and west, and then in the 16th century, my goodness, it broke every way. How many denominations are out there? Who knows? Thousands. Well, that's not a united church, so that's a problem. In chapter 15, Assyria is coming into the land. The place is about to be finished. The deportation and captivity of the people of God is beginning. Many will cease to exist as a people. And the book's starting to almost feel like a litany. A litany of the people will not quit worshiping other gods. Now the temple's all dismantled in deference to the kings of Assyria, and this is not going to be good. Hoshea is the last king of Israel. 17:4 of 2 Kings. We are back looking to Egypt for resources. In the Old Testament, looking back to Egypt is not ever a good thing to do. When you long for the breadbaskets of Egypt, that's not what the covenant's about. You're not taking the land, you're going back to where God took you out of. God took you out of there for a reason. So Assyria takes action. In 17:7 following, they're going to back up and let it rip. They give the whole story of the people of God. And it should be a warning to the people of God, even today. The Ten Commandments, the liturgy of the church, the scripture, are all here to keep us in the knot and going in the correct direction. They are not here for us to be creative with, right? That's not the deal. Let's look at 17:7. This occurred because the people of Israel had sinned against the Lord their God and had brought them up of the land of Egypt under the hand of God and away from Pharaoh, king of Egypt. They had worshipped other gods and walked in the custom of nations whom the Lord drove out before the people of Israel. And in the customs that the kings of Israel had introduced, the people of Israel secretly did things that were not right and against the Lord their God. Right? They built for themselves high places in all their towns, and from watchtowers to fortified cities. They set up for themselves pillars and sacred poles on every high hill. They're basically doing pagan things, in secret and in public. How secret is a big pole? Not a real secret. Or a mound. These are all things the pagans are doing, and God doesn't want his people doing that. The people even demonstrate they can make idols out of holy objects. Moses' serpent, they turn it into an idol in the text. By 1816, they're peeling the insides out of the temple to give to the kings of Assyria. So they're taking the paneling out. They're going in and gutting the church to hand it off to people. It's not good. 1826 is the first reference to the Aramaic in Scripture. So now, Aramaic is a Syrianized form of Hebrew. They don't speak the language they're supposed to speak even anymore. They don't speak Hebrew. They're really becoming other people. Now we're going to see Isaiah, son of Amos. 1935 is reminiscent of the Passover. It seems quite a large number, but this is what the text is. So let's look at 1935. And some of these numbers get a little exaggerated, probably. But that very night, the angel of the Lord set out and struck down 185,000 in the camp of the Assyrians. When morning dawned, they were all dead. So there. The king of Assyria left, went home, and lived in Nineveh. As he was worshiping in the house of his God, so he's got other God. So, see, but the angel of the Lord going out and striking dead 180,000 people. Hard to imagine that. Chapters 20-16, the captivity is foretold by Isaiah. Well, it's not only foretold, it's done. Manasseh does about everything wrong. Hosea is a little bit of a bright point. In 22:14, things are looking up maybe a little bit, and it references the female prophet Huldah. Somebody finds a book of the law of Moses and read it. Can you imagine that? Imagine if we lost all of our sacred scriptures and all of our liturgical text, and we forget totally who we are for a long period of time. And someone comes along and maybe finds a Bible and a sacramentary and a lectionary and things, and says, this is who we used to be. So they rediscover who they are. And then they realize how much trouble they're in. When they read the moral code again in the Mosaic Law, and they